Welcome, I'm Sam, and in this video you can learn how to join your granny squares together using the slip stitch and chain method. It's perfect for beginners because although it looks quite fancy, it's actually quite simple to make and it's quite versatile. You can use it for different coloured squares, as you can see in this blanket, or if you're doing one colour you can just keep going and it works perfectly for that as well. This join is great because it works for any granny square that's a multiple of 3. So if you're not using chain spaces in between your granny groups, all granny squares are a multiple of 3. So it will work with however big your granny square is. We've made all these little 4 round granny squares in the granny square series, but if you've got larger granny squares, it will work just as well. So I've already prepared some squares that we're going to join together in this video. We're going to imagine that this is the top of the blanket along here, and then this is the edge of the blanket. So this will be the middle of the blanket, and you can keep making for as big as you want your blanket. Yeah. So to start with, all the granny squares in the series, all these patterns are available on the granny square series, and they all finish on round 4. We're going to first show you how to do the first square, because the first square you've got nothing to join to, so you'll do a complete couple of rounds for the join. So to start, I'm going to show you how to get this far. Yeah, so you've made your 4 rounds of granny square or more. If you're making a larger square, that will be fine. So most of the granny squares finish in the corner. Yeah, so I've finished this square in the corner and I've just slip stitched to join that last round. So I'm going to make a chain 1, and then in each corner we're going to make 1 US single UK double. All the stitches for this round are US singles UK doubles. Yeah, we're then going to chain 2, and then we're going to go back into the corner to make another US single UK double. If you're using different colors, you can just cut your yarn and then slip stitch into the corner with your joining color. Yeah, so you would do that with a separate color. We're now going to go across each of these 12 stitches along the edge, making a US single or UK double. Yeah. So just keep going along, 1 stitch in each stitch, nearly at the end of my edge, and we're at the next corner. So in the corner we're going to make 1 stitch and get some slack on the yarn, 1 stitch, chain 2, and then another stitch. And we're going to repeat, so we're going to go in each stitch along the edge. When you get to the corner, make 1 stitch, chain 2, 1 stitch. So if you're making along, you can press pause, and I'll see you at the end of the round. So I've just made my last stitch. You should now have 14 stitches along each edge. That's 12 stitches plus 2 for the increase, yeah, where we made 2 stitches in each corner. So to join, I'm just going to skip that stitch in the corner and I'm going to slip stitch straight into the corner space. Yeah, and that's how your work should look. So for the joining round, we're now going to make a chain 1, and then we're going to, in that chain 2 space, we're going to make a US single UK double. We're then going to chain 4, 3 and 4, and then we're going to make another US single UK double into the corner space. Yeah, we're then going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3 and 4. We're going to skip the first 2 stitches and then we're going to slip stitch into the 3rd stitch. Yeah, pull that tight, make sure it's not too loose. We're then going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, skip 2 stitches and then slip stitch into the 3rd space. Chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, skip 2 stitches and slip stitch into the 3rd stitch. Chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, again skip 2 stitches, slip stitch into the 3rd space, into the 3rd stitch. Chain 4, 1, 2, 3 and 4, and you're back at your corner. So you're going to skip the 2 stitches and then go into the corner. We're going to make a US single, UK double, chain 4, 2, 3, 4, and then single or double, whichever you call it, into the corner. Yeah, and we're going to repeat. So that's our repeat. There you can see, it's quite pretty, isn't it, those chains? So if this is your first square, you're going to go all the way around following that same pattern until you get back to the start. So I'm going to go ahead and do that so that I can show you how to finish off. Yeah, if you're making along, you can press pause and I'll see you at the end of the round. Just remember that the corners are single, US single, rather than slip stitches, yeah, or that's a UK double, yeah. Skip 2, slip stitch, skip 2, slip stitch, or with those chain 4s in between each slip stitch, yeah. So like I said, you can press pause if you're making along, and I'll see you at the end of the round. So when you've made your last chain 4, to join up, I'm just going to slip stitch into that first US single that we made. And then you can cut and tie your yarn however you like to do that. But that's how your first square should look with this join, yeah? So because I'm now going to show you how to join it to the other square, I'm actually going to undo that work. So I've undone my work all the way. I've undone 2 edges, yeah, so that we're now going to join this square that we're working on. This is the working motif onto this square that we've already completed. This is the joining motif, yeah. So you can see I've got this edge free and this edge free. I'm just going to join these 2 edges together that are next to each other, yeah. We're going to imagine that this is the corner of the blanket. So this is going to be the edge of the blanket, and then this here will be the middle of the blanket, yeah. So I've made my chain 4, and I'm now going to single crochet, that's US terms, into the corner, or a double crochet if you're using UK terms. We're now going to chain 2. So we're now going to join our work to this square here. When we join squares together, we hold them back to back, or wrong sides facing. Yeah, so you've got the right side on the outside and the wrong side on the inside. Yeah, so we're going to slip stitch. We've chained 2. We're now going to slip stitch into the corner of the joining motif. So you want to go from the back through to the front, take hold of the yarn and pull it all the way through the loop on your hook. Pull that tight and then chain 2. We're now going to go back into the corner of the working motif, and we're going to make a US single or UK double. Chain 2. Now we're going to slip stitch into the next chain space of the joining motif. Again, back to front, pull the yarn through and then all the way through the loop on your hook. Pull that tight and chain 2. We're now going to go back onto the joining motif. yeah, the working motif, sorry. So you're going to skip 2 stitches and then go into the 3rd stitch to make a slip stitch. Chain 2. We now go into the next chain space. Yeah, you can see we've gone into that chain space. We're now going to go into the next chain space. Again, back to front, pull the yarn all the way through. Pull that tight and then chain 2. Back into the working motif, skip 2 stitches and then slip stitch. Pull tight, chain 2. We now go back into the joining motif, into the chain space, back to front. Pull the yarn through and through the loop on your hook. Chain 2. Back into the joining motif, the working motif. Sorry, that's the second time I've done that. Skip 2 stitches and into the 3rd stitch, slip stitch. Chain 2. Into the next chain space, back to front, pull the yarn through. Chain 2. Back onto the working motif, skip 2 stitches into the 3rd stitch, make a slip stitch. Chain 2. Back into the joining motif, into the next chain space, again back. Go through the back, in through to the front, pull the yarn all the way through. Chain 2. And you should now be at your corner. So if you skip 2 stitches, you're now at the corner. So we're going to make a US single, UK double, and then I'm going to lay the work out for you to see where we're up to. So there's our join. This is the edge of the blanket, so we've joined those corners together on the squares next to each other. When we're working in the middle of the blanket, I don't like to join the corners on the squares next to each other. If you find that confusing, you can just go ahead and do that the same as we did here. But I'm going to just ignore that corner of the square next to it because I like to join the squares diagonal. Yeah, so we're going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Go back into your corner to make your second US single, UK double. And then we're going to finish this edge the same as we made the other edges that we weren't joining. So we're going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, skip 2 and slip stitch. Chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, skip 2 and slip stitch. Chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, skip 2 and slip stitch. Then we're going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, skip 2 and slip stitch. And we're now at our last chain 4. So we're going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're back at the corner where we started. So I'm just going to slip stitch into that first US single, UK double, and then cut and tie the yarn. So that's how your work should look. Let me turn that around because we said that was the top of the blanket. So these are all joined at the top, and then we've got these 2 corners free that haven't been joined yet, but we're going to look at that in the next 2 squares, how to join that all together. Okay, so cut and tie your yarn. I like to chain 2, cut the yarn, and then pull the hook out, and then tighten up those chain 2s, and then I'll weave that in later. Yeah, so take your next square. I've got one ready here, and we're going to go ahead and make that first round of US singles, UK doubles. And if you're making along, you can press pause, and I'll see you when we're ready to do our slip stitch and chains. So as you can see, I've slip stitched and chained all the way along one edge, and then I've nearly finished the last edge. So I'm just coming up to the corner, so I'm going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to go into the corner with a US single, UK double. So I'm going to join this square to here, which means that this is the middle of my blanket. So I'm not going to join these two corners of the squares next to each other, but we are going to join the corner of the squares diagonal from each other. Yeah, so we're going to complete this first corner. So we're going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to make that US single, UK double into the corner. So we're now ready to join. So again, we're going to hold our work wrong sides facing. Yeah, we're going to make first 2 chains, 1, 2, and then we're going to go into not the corner but the chain space. Yeah, so go from the back to the front, the first chain space. Yeah, pull tight and chain 2. We're then going to go back onto the square we're working on. We're going to skip 2 stitches and slip stitch into the third. Chain 2. We're then going to slip stitch into the next chain space. Remember, from the back to the front, pull all the way through and chain 2. Back into the working motif, skip 2 and slip stitch. Pull tight and chain 2. We now go into the next chain space. Oops. Chain 2. Back onto the square we're working on, skip 2 and slip stitch. Chain 2. Back into the joining motif, into the next chain space, pull through and chain 2. Back into the working motif, skip 2 stitches and slip stitch. Chain 2. And then this should be your last chain space before the corner. Go in, pull all the way through, pull tight and chain 2. And we're now at the corner, so we're just going to go, so you should skip 2 and be at the corner. Go ahead and make a US single, UK double, and then we're going to chain 2. So let me just lay the work out so that you can see where we're going. So we're now, you can see all these corners, none of them have been joined yet. We're now going to join this corner to this corner. Yeah, so this corner here. So you're going to go in from the back to the front, pull the yarn through all the way through the loop on your hook, pull that tight and then chain 2. We're now going to go back into the corner of the square we're working on and make a US single, UK double, and then chain 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4, and that's those 3 squares now joined. So let me take that down. Yeah, so you can see that these 2 corners have been joined and this corner is still yet to be joined. We'll do that in a minute when we join the 4th square. Yeah, so we're going to finish off this edge. We've chained 4. Oops. So we're now going to skip 2 stitches, 1, 2, and slip stitch. And we're going to go all the way along like so. 1, 2, 3, 4, skip 2, and slip stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4 chains, skip 2, and slip stitch. Chain 4, skip 2 and slip stitch. Chain 4, and we're at the end of our square, so we're going to slip stitch into that first US single, and again I like to chain 2 to finish off, and that's how your work should look. Remember, that's the, no, yeah, that was right, that's the top of the blanket. There we go. So cut and tie your yarn and then start your fourth motif. We're going to do this row of singles and then I'll start the slip stitch and chains with you. So I've just finished making my round of US singles. I've been using the Isaac square, which has a slightly different stitch setup to the other granny squares in the series. So I just thought I'd talk about that. We have a chain space along the edge in the middle, so I've put 2 stitches in there, and then at the corner we don't actually have a corner space, instead we have a corner stitch. So if you count your stitches, 1 2 3 4 5 6, it's that 6th stitch that we go into to make the corner. Yeah, so in that stitch number 6, so you'll do 2 stitches in your chain space and then do 1 2 3 4 5 6, and then in stitch 6 you'll do a US single, chain 2, and then another US single to make the corner, rather than doing it in the chain space as we have for the other ones. Yeah, so I'm now going to join this square onto here. Yeah, so we're going to just start by making this first edge. It'll actually be like that, but I can't work upside down. So I've chained 1 when I slip stitched into that corner to finish. We're now going to make a 1 US single, UK double, chain 4, 1 2 3 4, and then go back in and make a US single, UK double. And then going to chain 4, 1 2 3 4, skip 2 stitches and slip stitch, chain 4, 1 2 3 4, skip 2 stitches and slip stitch. Oops, I snagged the yarn there. I'm going to try again. Skip 2, slip stitch, chain 4, 1 2 3 4, skip 2 and slip stitch, chain 4, 1 2 3 4, give it some slack on my yarn, skip 2 and slip stitch, chain 4, 1 2 3 and 4, and we should now be at the next corner. If you skip 2, you'll be at the corner space. So because this is the top of the blanket, so we joined our corners. This is going to be the edge of the blanket, so we're going to join the corners here, but this is the middle of the blanket, so I'm not going to join those corners. Like I said, if it's too confusing for you, you can go ahead and just join all your corners to all your corners, but instead I'm going to complete that first corner. So I'm going to go in, make a US single, UK double, and then I'm going to chain 4. If you want to join it, then you'll just chain 2, slip stitch to join, and then chain 2, but I'm going to chain 4 and then go back into the corner to make that little stitch, the US single, UK double. So I'm now ready to join. I'm going to turn the work because, like I said, I can't crochet upside down. So the first place I'm going to join onto this square will be the chain space, not the corner space. Yeah, so I'm going to chain 2. If you're picking up your work, remember it's wrong sides facing. Some people like to work flat, so then you'll have your right side facing. Yeah, so we've chained 2. We're going to slip stitch into the first chain space, pull the arm through all the way, and then chain 2, 1 2. We're now going to go back onto this motif we're working on. You're going to skip 2 stitches and slip stitch. Pull that tight and chain 2. We're now going to go into the next chain space. Remember, back to front, pull the yarn through and chain 2. 1, 2. Back into the working motif, skip 2 and slip stitch. Chain 2 and slip stitch into the chain space. Back to front, pull it all the way through. Try not to snag your yarn or split the yarn. Chain 2, back into the working motif, skip 2 and slip stitch. Chain 2, we're then going to join into the next chain space. Chain 2, back into the motif you're working on, skip 2 and slip stitch. Chain 2. So this will be your last chain space that we're going to go in now. Yeah, back to front, pull the yarn all the way through, chain 2, and you should be at the corner. So if you skip 2 stitches, 1, 2, we're at the corner space. So into that chain 2 corner space, we make a US single, UK double, and then chain 2. So we're now going to join all our corners together. Yeah, we've got this corner that's completely free on that motif, and then we've got these two joined together. Yeah, so we're going to go under all of the work, yeah, under the slip stitch where they're joined, and then up and into that corner. Yeah, you're then going to pinch that together, pull the yarn all the way through all of them, and then through the loop on your hook. Pull that tight because it might be a bit slack, and then chain 2. And then we're going to go back into the corner space of the motif you're working on and make a US single, UK double. Chain 2. So we did just join those two together, and now we're going to join these two together. So again, I've turned my work. This is the top of the blanket, this is the edge of the blanket. So we're going to join those two corners together when we come to them. So we've chained 2, and we're now going to go into the first chain space after the corner, and then chain 2. Skip 2 stitches on the motif you're working on, and slip stitch. Chain 2. Into the next chain space, back to front, pull all the way through, chain 2. Back onto the working motif, skip 2 and slip stitch. The work can get a bit slack here as the blanket gets heavier. You want to make sure that you're pulling your chains tight. So we're then going to chain 2, well, your slip stitch is tight, sorry. Back into the next chain space. Remember, back to front, pull tight, chain 2. Into the working motif, skip 2 and slip stitch. Chain 2. Into the next chain space and slip stitch. Chain 2. Onto the working motif, skip 2 and slip stitch. Chain 2, and this should be your last chain space on the motif that you're joining. Back to front, pull all the way through and chain 2, and we're now at the corner. So we're going to skip 2 stitches into the corner, make your US single, UK double. And like I said, this is going to be the edge of the blanket, so we are going to join those corners together. So we're going to chain 2, and then into the corner space, all the way through, pull tight, chain 2. I'm going to turn the work and we go back into the corner to make a US single, UK double, and then we can finish off that edge. So there's all of those joined, yeah, and you'll see that we've now completely joined the middle by just joining the diagonals, yeah. These ones next to each other are free in the middle, these ones in the middle are free as well, but the ones along the edge, the ones along the edge we've joined together, and here along this edge as well. But like I said, if that's too confusing, just join them all. Then it's no bother. I just think it's a bit neater and easier because you get to skip a couple of slip stitches, but it's entirely up to you. Don't worry too much about it, yeah? So we're going to finish off this edge together now. So we want to chain 4, skip 2 and slip stitch, 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 and the last one we're going to chain 4 and then to finish off slip stitch into that first US single, UK double you made. As I said, I like to chain 2, but if you have a different method you prefer, just use that. And there we go. Isn't that pretty? Isn't that cute? I love it. And I've also got a similar join for hexagon. If you're following along with the hexagon series, we can do the same thing. So I shall make another video joining hexagons together. It's very similar. So I hope you enjoyed that video, and I'll see you in the next.